Hello and welcome to today's video. My name is Alicia and on this channel I talk all things luxury, life and fashion, so if you're interested, please stick around. Today's video is, I'm going to jump the gun and say it's very different to anything I've ever posted, and it will probably be the only video of its kind that I ever post. I tossed up about whether I wanted to film this and then ultimately decided that I was going to film it, edit it, and then decide if I wanted to post it online. So if you're seeing this video, you know what my final decision was. And one of the reasons that I kind of contemplated it is because this is related to my life. It is related to the life that Bubs and I share, and it's part of our journey. But it is also something that a lot of you guys may never have to go through. But I think the simple fact that some of you may go through this and some of you may find this information somewhat helpful in your life, I have decided to bite the bullet and film this. So where do we start? This is Bubs and my journey through the Australian partner visa application process. This video relates to the Subclass 820 and the Subclass 801 visa, and that is the onshore partner application. In order to file onshore, the applicant must already be in Australia on another substantive visa. Please keep in mind that even though there is a standardized process, everyone's journey through this experience is going to be different, and this is just the journey that Bubs and I had. Additionally, I want to emphasize that none of this is to be taken as legal advice. I am not a lawyer. I did not study law, but I feel like it's just something that I need to say. Please take this as part of general research that you would do, and then consult the services of a lawyer or a migration agent. And I will name the law firm that we used at the end of the video. Key terminology. So I'm going to cover a couple keywords that you'll probably hear me use a handful of times. That way you guys can follow this video smoothly and you don't have to go and Google definitions. We're going to start with the applicant. The applicant is the individual who is looking to gain Australian residency, whether that be temporary or permanent. The sponsor is the individual who is sponsoring to bring the applicant to Australia, in this case, myself. Now, the requirements for a sponsor will vary depending on the type of visa. For example, the sponsor of a partner visa must meet different requirements to the sponsor of an employee-sponsored visa, for example. For the partner visa, the sponsor is generally the partner, the de facto partner, or the husband or wife of the applicant. Now, when it comes to the sponsor for the partner visa, they must be over the age of 18. They must be an Australian citizen or permanent resident. In some cases, they can potentially be an eligible New Zealand citizen, and they must be in the relationship of their own free will. Obviously, there's a couple other criteria that I'm not going to go into detail because they never applied to our situation. Subclass 820 refers to the temporary partner visa, and Subclass 801 refers to the permanent partner visa. Now, when you apply at the time of application, you are simultaneously applying for both at the same time. You could potentially be granted the 820 first and then the 801, and in some cases you could be granted both at the same time. On to the actual journey. So for us, realistically, this journey started in November of 2022. Bub's previous substantive visa was coming to an end. It would expire in March of 2023, and so we needed time to start looking at options and the paperwork that was involved. We had realistically two options, and that was to renew the previous substantive visa that he was on, or to find another visa that we qualify for. We had the partner visa in the back of our mind for a long time. I'm talking over a year and a half at that point, and it was something that we'd considered as a viable option. And so the first step for us was to book a consultation with a lawyer. So in mid-November, I want to say, mid-November, we booked a consultation for early December with a migration lawyer. So that initial consultation was a 30-minute consultation that happened on the 9th of December 2022 with an amazing lawyer who would later become the person who would handle our case for us. During that consultation, it was basically re-emphasized, I guess, to us that we were suitable candidates based on everything that we had told her when it came to our living situation, our finances, our relationship, and the future that we both saw for us. 5 days later, we signed a fixed cost contract and made the first payment on it. At that point, it was official that we would be processing and going forward with the partner visa, and that would be the line that we picked as opposed to renewing his previous substantive visa. I will be doing a rough cost breakdown at the end of the video. I will be excluding the legal fees from that cost breakdown for a number of reasons. The primary reason being legal fees, even within the same firm, vary drastically because, you know, obviously the principal is going to charge an hourly that is very different to, for example, a paralegal. So for that reason, I've decided to leave the legal fees out of it. So between mid-December and late February, we are essentially collecting documents and filling out forms and doing revisions of those forms and making sure that all the information that we provide is correct. Now, it's not as simple and as straightforward as it sounds, because you're looking to go back at least 12 months from the date of lodgement. And realistically for us, because we didn't anticipate, you know, 12 months from that time, we had not been collecting evidence essentially. And so we were going back 12 months worth of bank statements, we were going through 12 months worth of our inboxes, finding receipts for utility bills and, you know, date nights, trying to go through photos and all of this kind of stuff. And Bubs is also someone who doesn't really like taking photos. So photos of him and I were so hard to come by, especially photos that were considered appropriate to send to the department as supporting evidence. And it was just going through a lot of devices, going through a lot of accounts, and going through a lot of paperwork. And some of it was also information that we never anticipated we would need. We needed both of our travel history for the last 10 years, for example, arrival dates and departure dates, whether it was into Australia, into America, into China. And I will say Bubs did a lot of traveling in the last 10 years. And he did that traveling across 2 different passports, and we were trying to get dates, we were contacting his family back abroad. So it's not as simple and straightforward as, hey, this is what we have, it'll take 2 days. No, this was, you know, essentially 2 months of work trying to get all of this stuff ready in time. So when it comes to the evidence that you provide, there's generally 4 categories that they need to satisfy, and that is nature of commitment, nature of household, nature of finances, and the social aspect of your relationship. Now, some of it is going to be in addition to this, things like identifying documents you need to provide as well. And like I previously mentioned, there are forms that you need to fill. Some of the forms are filled by the applicant, some are filled by the sponsor, and some are actually filled by your family and friends in support of your relationship as external evidence. Now, I'm going to give you some examples of the types of documents that we provided, and get ready, it's a long list. So obviously for identifying documents, we started with birth certificates and we started with a passport, and then we had government issued photo ID, so like a driver's license, a photo card, that kind of stuff. And because Bubs obviously is the one who is the applicant, he also needed to provide documentation and cards from his home country, which is a little bit harder because some of them were expired, but they were provided anyway to kind of say, hey, it does exist, but we haven't had a chance to renew it. Then we move on to things like utility bills in joint names, bank accounts, joint finances, white goods, appliances, any major purchases, vacations that you've paid for, holidays. What else did we provide? Bubs and I also, as a little 4th anniversary present to ourselves, which we thought was cute at the time, but we didn't realize would actually come in really, really helpful in this process, was we registered our relationship with Service New South Wales, and you get a certificate for that. And so we supplied that, and there is a cost involved in that as well. I'm not going to include that cost because that certificate was actually obtained completely separate of the visa. It wasn't obtained for the visa. We just thought it would be a cute 4th anniversary thing. Little did we know, you know, almost 12 months down the line, we would find another use for that. Once these documents were collated, we actually uploaded them to a portal that both Bubs and I and our lawyer had access to. Now, I want to emphasize that for us, we did a 100% virtual experience. We did not actually meet our lawyer in person, and I actually believe her home state is Victoria, where our home state is New South Wales. So if they weren't 100% online, I definitely think we would have just gone with another firm for obvious reasons. But basically, we would upload all of this information to a portal, and it also doubled up as a form of communication where we could send questions, we could schedule phone calls, and we could schedule video calls. And it made it really, really easy because obviously she has other clients and she's got a schedule, and it's just easier to kind of book it in as opposed to waiting for an email. Because once you do anything in that portal, whether it's me uploading something or whether it's her uploading something, you actually get an email notification. So you're told straight away that something is happening on that portal, and at that point you can decide whether it requires your immediate attention or whether it's something you can kind of deal with in a couple of hours. On the 3rd of March 2023, we officially lodged our application, and we also paid the application fee. Now, that was facilitated again through our lawyer. In the days following our lodgement, we were told to start gathering police background checks. Now, you have to get a police background check for any country that you have resided in for more than 12 months in the last 10 years, regardless of your age. Even if you were a minor in these countries, as long as you have lived there for at least 12 months in the last 10 years, you need a police background check, and you need to get it done in all the names that you have been known by. So say, for example, if you're in the situation where you have actually married your partner and you are not de facto and you've taken their last name, you will need a background check in your maiden last name and your married last name. So for myself, that was just one background check, and Bubs had to get 2. One for Australia and one for China. The Australian one is done via the AFP website, and the turnover I think is normally a couple of days. It wasn't a long turnover for us. We got them pretty quickly, and I don't remember paying for like a rush fee or anything. China was a little bit trickier in the sense that it's not a website. You actually have to have a family member, go to a police station and get it done in that sense, and we were very fortunate that Bub's mum was able to do that, and we got those checks within a week as well. Like I mentioned before, Bub's previous substantive visa went out in March, specifically on March 15th. So when it came to March 15th, that's when his previous visa ended and his Bridging A visa started. Now, during that 12-day period, for some of you guys, that rollover period may be longer, but for those 12 days, he had to maintain the conditions of his previous visa, and that meant he still had to be enrolled full-time in a tertiary education, and he had to maintain health insurance. So you need to make sure that, you know, once you lodge, you're not just cutting off the requirements of your previous substantive visa, that you follow it through to the end of that visa period. And it's incredibly important, and it's something that was emphasized to us hugely because he did have requirements and conditions on that visa. So we get our police background checks and we send them forward onto the lawyer, and then we go 2 months without a word from her. Now, that's not actually a bad thing. I know it sounds terrible that, you know, you paid for the services of someone and you don't hear from them for 2 months, but when it comes to something like the partner visa and any visa in general, you cannot just like hit up the department and be like, yo, give me an update. They do not tell you where in the process your visa is at, and they will only contact you if there is an issue. Now, an issue could be they're ready for your health checks or they're ready for your police checks, and another issue could be, hey, you don't have enough paperwork, we want some additional information. Now, because you employ the services of a lawyer or a migration agent, the department will contact them first, and then in turn they will contact you. So there is no point in maintaining regular contact because there is no way to get an update. It is very much a waiting game, and that is something that your agent will probably tell you and say, hey, we will reach out to you when the department reaches out to us. So it's not exactly a red flag that, you know, you go 2 months without hearing from them, because realistically, there's no update to give you. There's nothing that they can say or do to kind of give you a hint of, hey, you know, we're at this stage now. No, you will find out when the department wants to tell you. It's one random Thursday morning and I'm at work just scrolling through my emails and the department want a health check. So we knew this was coming, but it was a matter of when the department was ready for it. Essentially, the applicant needs to do a health exam. The health exam and components of that exam will vary depending on which country you are coming from. So for example, if you were coming from China, you would require a different set of exams to someone who is potentially coming from South Africa. It is also crucial to note that these are not tests that a GP can carry out. You cannot just walk into a clinic and ask someone to run your bloods. There is a specific location that is allocated that exclusively does immigration related health exams, and you have to go there. For us, that was located in Sydney CBD. And I think it was the 24th of May we actually did that exam, and it was a very quick process. I think we were in and out in half an hour, and they don't give you the results. They will directly upload the results and send them off to the department, and there is literally no kind of exchange of that information between the medical service and yourself. It is of my belief as well that the lawyer doesn't even know the results of that medical exam. They will be able to see that it has been uploaded and handed over to the department, but they will not actually see the physical results either. Then around mid-June, we decide to engage the services of the law firm again for a bridging visa B. Now, we have to keep in mind at this point in time, Bubs is on a bridging visa A. A bridging visa A, while it grants you full working rights, does not grant you any travel rights. We have a friend that's getting married in Thailand in July, and so we go for a bridging visa B. A bridging visa B ensures that you are allowed re-entry back into Australia. So essentially, on a bridging visa A, there is nothing stopping you from leaving the country, but on that particular visa, you cannot get back in to the country. So we go through the bridging visa B application process, which is a very simple, a very straightforward application process. And I think 2 days after we lodge that, we're actually granted the bridging visa B. And so we go off to Phuket, we enjoy the wedding, we have our fun, and then we come back. And just like before, I think this time it's a little bit shorter because we engage the services of the bridging visa B. But we go for about, I want to say, a month without hearing from the law firm. And then the morning of August 14th happens. So what happened on August 14th? It is just a little bit past 9 a.m. in the morning, and I am literally walking up the stairs to liturgy. And I get this phone call from the lawyer. And it's this like heart-sinking feeling you have, because up until this point, we have not had a phone call that hasn't been scheduled. And so you get this like sinking feeling, and I pick up the call and we do our little like morning exchange, the pleasantries, and we engage in a little bit of small talk. And then she's like, oh yeah, the department reached out to us and they've granted the temporary visa. So the subclass 820 at this point is granted. And it's kind of this like shock, but also this like weight off your shoulders. And it's one of those things where it's like, we trusted her so much and we knew that we put together a really strong and really solid case, but there's still always that like little bit of doubt in the back of your mind of, what if it wasn't enough? What if they find something that they don't like? Or what if they just say no? But we were so happy. Now, Bubs and I were not together when this phone call happened, and he was actually at work. And I'm sorry, but that is not information you can sit on until the end of the business day. And so I then proceed to blow up his phone. And I think after like the 4th call or something, he finally picks up. And I can tell he's slightly ticked off because he's like, what do you want? And I'm like, the visa got granted. Okay, bye. And then I hang up. 5 seconds later, he calls me back and he's like, come again? I was like, yeah, that's one of the biggest steps done. And it was just this shock. It was like, you know, it was 5 months, just a little bit over 5.5 months since we lodged, and to get it in that time frame, we were expecting to wait the full 12 months to get it, and it was just this massive weight lifted off our shoulders. So the following day, on the 15th of August, we actually go to Woodcut at Crown Sydney to celebrate this huge milestone. And I think for a lot of people, they will genuinely never understand why it's such a big deal. I'm gonna start crying. When you're someone who is an Australian citizen and you fall for someone who is also an Australian citizen, this is something that you will never have to think about. You will never have to worry about what if the future that we want can't happen. But that was very much the case for Bubs and I. When you are in that situation, you can do all the planning in the world. You can say, I want to live here and I want to, you know, we want to have kids and we want to do this. But without a visa, it's not going to happen. So to have it granted is a huge thing, and it's this weight lifted off your shoulders, and it's one less thing to worry about, and you can kind of go into the future and be like, okay, well, with that kind of solidified, we can do whatever we want. We can plan whatever we want without having this lingering thought of, okay, what do we do when the next one expires? So what's next? Like I mentioned before, we were only granted the subclass 820, which is the temporary partner visa. Now, there is going to be a time lapse between the 820 and the 801. When you become eligible for the subclass 801 permanent partner visa, the department will reach out to you essentially with an invitation. Now, in our situation, that invitation could come to myself or it could go to the lawyer, as the department has both sets of information. You then need to provide some additional paperwork to prove that between being granted the temporary and the time of application for the permanent, that you have continued to maintain the relationship and you continue to meet the criteria that the department have set forward. Once the 801 is granted, you are essentially done with the partner visa. That is the partner visa done. And then you are left with a decision. Do you want to go for Australian citizenship? Now, for some people, this means that they will get dual citizenship with countries that allow dual citizenship with Australia. And for other people, it may mean forfeiting the citizenship of their home country. So there's a lot of things to consider. It's not as simple as I want the benefits of being an Australian citizen. It's potentially the question of what will I have to sacrifice for that? The big question, who did we use? So we actually engaged the services of Mason Chen Law Group, and specifically a lawyer named Rondick. Now, I will link their Instagram, their website, their TikTok down below, and if you click on those links, you may have actually seen their principal, Tracy Chen, before. She graced our screens during COVID of 2020 and did something that no law firm or no lawyer had really ever considered, and that was giving essentially free legal advice. Mind you, don't take any of it as legal advice, but she was definitely providing a lot of information for people that they could use towards their own migration cases. Now, obviously, there have been a lot of law firms since then who've kind of jumped on that bandwagon, not just in migration, but also in criminal law. And a few of them have seen the same success that Mason Chen Law Group have seen. For us, the experience with the firm has been amazing, not just with Rondick, but with her assistants as well. They've always been so quick with emails, and for us, a big thing was we loved the virtual component that they offered. I do believe they have an office. I do believe it is in Melbourne, but for us, being able to kind of just deal with everything through a webcam or through a portal or through a phone call was just what we needed. Obviously, some of you may not see that as a selling point, but for Bubs and I, when we're always at work and we're, you know, in between places, it was the best thing for us. And she was so sweet. She was amazing. She answered all of our questions, regardless of how stupid they sounded. And she was kind of just that breath of knowledge for us, because I don't have a lot of experience with immigration, and Bubs, his experience is also limited to using lawyers because that's what they've always done. And so for us, it was the best financial decision we made, and going through that process with the support of Rondic made me realize that there was probably no way I was ever going to do that on my own. There was information that she'd asked for that we never even considered as being, you know, something we needed to provide for our case. So I absolutely loved them, and I can't say enough nice things about the firm. But like I said before, I will link all of their details down below. Now we move on to the cost breakdown component of this video. So, like I mentioned before, I'm not going to be disclosing the legal fees, and I previously mentioned the reasons why. Now, the application fee itself is $8,198.19. This included the GST and card surcharge. It is worth noting that since we applied in March of this year, the application fee has actually increased. So I will also link immigration's website for the partner visa down below as well, so you guys can kind of just go directly into that link and see things like the criteria, the application average time periods, and the application fee itself. The police background checks in Australia costed $42.22 each, so we had 2 checks done. I also did not have my birth certificate handy, so I had to have it reissued by Birth, Deaths and Marriages at a cost of $77, and that did include a rush fee because we were on a little bit of a time crunch. I thought I could find it, and then I didn't find it, and then I realistically only had about a week and a half to get it, so we just paid the rush fee. It wasn't huge, but it was like we needed the document. Something to also keep in mind if you are coming from a country whose primary language is not English is that any documentation you have will need to be translated by a NATI certified translator, which is a service that we had to use because Bub's home country is China and everything is in Chinese, obviously. So we had 3 documents total translated. We had a birth certificate and 2 police background checks because Bubs has 2 variations to the spelling of his last name, and they totaled $230.67. The cost per document from what I saw in my research varies, but it's not like a huge variation. It's probably like a couple dollars here and there. And finally, his health exam. So his health exam was $500.17. I'm pretty sure the 17 cents was like a card surcharge that we had to pay. So those are all of the expenses realistically that we incurred minus our legal fees. I am going to end this video here, otherwise I'm going to ramble on forever and then you're going to fall asleep. So if you have any questions, comments or queries, please feel free to leave them down below and I will answer them to the best of my ability. Please keep in mind that this video I don't even think qualifies as general advice. This is just a recount of the journey that Bubs and I went through as we applied for this. If you are looking for advice that is tailored to your specific situation and it can be related to any visa, it doesn't have to be the partner visa, please consider engaging the services of a lawyer or a migration agent. I have attached the details of an amazing firm down below. Thank you so much for watching this video and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are. Bye!